Morning, everyone. In a few minutes, I'll sign Senate Bill 1, bipartisan legislation approving the Keystone XL pipeline. I want to thank all my colleagues for being here today, and I want to thank Sean McGarvey, President of North America's Building Trades Union, for being here as well. It's pretty simple. Keystone XL pipeline is a good idea for our economy, and it's a good idea for our country. Members of both parties know it. They've put politics aside and passed this very important bill. The President's own State Department says this project will create up to 42,000 direct jobs. Many labor unions know it. They say Keystone just isn't a pipeline, it's a lifeline for America's construction workers. And the overwhelming majority of the American people know it as well. So to the President, I would just say this: do the right thing. Sign this bill and help us create more jobs in America and create a healthier economy. And with that, let me turn it over to Sean McGarvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Majority Leader. On behalf of the 3 million people that I represent in North America's building trades, we want to thank you for your tenacity and not giving up on this middle-class, jobs-producing, private sector-funded project. We're excited to be at this point. We're excited with this ceremony today, and we urge the President of the United States to put our men and women back to work across the length of this pipeline as soon as possible. We urge the President to sign the bill. Thank you.
Well, the new majority is getting Congress back to work for the American people. Passing a bipartisan jobs and infrastructure bill like Keystone represents another step along that path. I'd like to recognize a few members who made that possible. First is the bill's namesake. John Hoeven has literally been a warrior on this issue. He fought hard for years. He joined alliances across the aisle, and no matter how long it took, Senator Hoeven never gave up. He never doubted that common sense would eventually prevail in the Senate. Then there's Senator Murkowski. She's a gifted bill manager, no doubt about that. She worked hard to manage varying amendments and competing priorities, and no matter how they voted, every senator owes Senator Murkowski a real debt of gratitude for proving through her skill that a functioning Senate was possible. A new majority is for work, and many Democrats are as well. One of them, Senator Cantwell, also deserves a mention. Even though she didn't vote for Keystone, but as her party's bill manager, she worked constructively with us to process amendments, so we're certainly grateful for her as well. And so now where we are, as others have indicated, we're hoping common sense will prevail here, and the President will sign this extraordinary jobs bill.
When the President spoke during the State of the Union address, he said that the United States must aim higher than a single pipeline. And I agree with him, but this is a great place to start. Under his policies, domestic production has shut down on federal lands, yet it's increased everywhere else by 35%. And that has led to more money in the pockets of hardworking Americans, and they've benefited from having more domestic energy supply. The Keystone Pipeline would go through western South Dakota. And for those counties in western South Dakota, it would be a good shot in the arm. For many of those counties, the property taxes the pipeline would bring in would fund schools. It would fund their roads and their bridges. It would give them the opportunity to transport the energy supplies that they need so desperately in a safer manner and take better care of their environment, as all of the studies have proven. So if the President says no to this bill, what he's saying is no to safety, he's saying no to the environment, no to funding schools, and no to safer roads and bridges. And I'm determined to do all I can to get this bill signed into law so we can build this pipeline.
I want to start out by thanking the House for passing the Senate bill so that we don't have to go to conference and the bill can now go to the President. This really is, it's about energy, it's about jobs, it's about economic growth, it's about national security for our country through energy security, and everyone's on board, except for the President. For starters, you've got both houses of Congress, overwhelming majority, 270 votes in the House, 62 votes in the Senate, bipartisan majorities in the Congress. The states are on board. All 6 states on the route have approved this project. Now, as I've said before, given that they've had 6 years to do it, that's not a real high bar, but all the states are on board. Most importantly, the American people are on board, overwhelmingly. Last 3 years, poll after poll has showed that between 65 and 70% of the American people support this project. So you've got the Congress on board, the bipartisan majorities, you've got the states on board, and you've got the people of this country on board. Mr. President, you need to join us and approve this project. Make no mistake, we're in a global battle to determine who's going to supply energy. Is it going to be OPEC? Is it going to be Russia? It's going to be countries like Iran and Venezuela? Or are we going to get our energy here at home? Are we going to work with our closest friend and ally, Canada, to produce our energy here at home? And look what it means to our consumers. A year ago, the price at the pump for a gallon of gasoline was $1 higher. You know, if it were a tax cut, the drop in gas prices at the pump is $100 billion. It'd be like a $100 billion tax cut in the consumer's pocket. So when we ask the American people, where do you want the energy produced? Who do you want to be the energy leader in the world? The answer is pretty clear. They want to produce that energy here at home. They want to work with our closest ally, Canada. So when the President says no to investment in producing more energy in this country, no to the very infrastructure that we need to move that energy around our country safely. And remember, it's not just Canada that's producing this oil. It's oil that's produced in my home state of North Dakota and Montana, domestic oil that we're moving to our refineries for the benefit of our consumers. But when the President says no, that's music to OPEC's ears, because it puts them right back in the saddle, doesn't it? And when our energy is declining because that very investment is blocked, then OPEC will raise those prices right back up. Consumers will pay more at the pump, and we'll have less energy security. When you look at what's going on in the Middle East, when you look at what's going on with ISIS, do we really want to rely on OPEC for our energy? Americans say no. Congress is on board, the states are on board, the American people are on board. Mr. President, we need you to join us and sign this legislation.
Well, thank you, Senator Hoeven, for being the warrior on this. You know, I believe that America's national security and America's economic security are tied directly to America's energy security. And that's why it was easy for me to recommend to leadership that we simply accept the Senate amendments and Senate 1 rather than go to a conference committee. I think the amendments, while not universally loved, strengthen the bill, and it strengthens the bill's political palatability, which I think is an important point. For far too long, we've seen gridlock grab this town, and now we've demonstrated in this very first bill a functioning Congress. And the best of us is illustrated, I think, in this bill. And I think it would be a tragic shame if the President didn't stand with us as we're willing to stand with him, willing to help him do the thing that he could have done unilaterally with a stroke of his pen by signing the presidential permit. Sean, I'm especially pleased you're here. When I was on the Public Service Commission in North Dakota and we sited the first Keystone pipeline, 216 miles greenfield, 600 landowners' land, I saw every mile of the pipeline. I know it very well, those 216 miles in North Dakota. And I met the labor force on the site. These are real workers. These are real jobs. This lifts up middle-class America in a big way. But even more than the pipe fitters and the heavy machinery operators and the truck drivers, it was the local cafe, the hotels, the retailers, the hardware stores in little towns that, quite frankly, at that time, needed a shot in the arm. And your men and women that working on the site gave us that shot in the arm. So I understand that we all have political considerations and that the President does too. But today, those political considerations, I think, are diminished by the fact that the new political consideration is that the people's representatives, in perfect concert with the people that we do represent, are willing to stand with the President as he stands with them and hopefully signs this bill into law.
All right, time to sign the bill.
Speaking of signing the bill.